सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ श्री गणेशाय नमः। ॐ श्री सरस्वत्यै नमः। ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरं। Hari Om all. So today we are meeting for a special session in which we are going to have an overview of Indian knowledge traditions. Overview of Indian knowledge traditions. Now why are we doing this? Because many times what happens, we study different things in bits and pieces, but we don't understand its place in the overall knowledge field. So it's always good to get a complete view of what is this Indian knowledge tradition, and then we will see some particular topics. So today we are going to focus on the Vidyasthana, the Chaturdasha or Ashtadasha Vidyasthanas that are spoken of as the basis for the entire Indian culture, Indian civilization. Now you see, India is a very unique country. Why it is like that? As Pujya Gurudev would explain, Swami Chinmayananji would explain, India is one country with 40 countries inside it. As a overall, if you see India, each state has got its own culture, its own ways of attire and food and environment, nature, everything is different. But still, through all these differences, there is something which is common in the entire Indian region, and that common factor is our culture, Indian culture. Now, Indian culture is the oldest living culture in the whole world. This is something that we must understand. There have been many civilizations, many cultures who were at the prime at some point of time, but are no more there, in the sense that either they are not living or they are not being practiced. We have Roman cultures and Egyptian cultures and even Chinese culture. Chinese people are there, but that culture is not practiced how it was before. That is not practiced. But Indian culture is not like that. It is the oldest living culture in the whole world. Now, what makes it oldest living culture in the world? Why is India like this? Why is Indian culture even there now? Though there were so many problems, so many difficulties that India faced as a country, isn't it? We had so many invasions happening, etc. So many levels of destruction happened from outside, from inside. Still it is sustaining, not only sustaining, thriving, progressing. What makes it tick like this? What exactly there is? So the base is what makes the entire Indian culture or Indian civilization so strong. We know this concept. Stronger the foundation, stronger the building. Isn't it? If you want to build a taller building, you have to go deeper and make the foundation stronger. Now, what is the foundation of this Indian culture or Indian civilization or India, so to say? And that is knowledge. That's why it is longest, it is the oldest living culture, because the base is knowledge. And there is abundance of knowledge in all fields that you can think of that we have in our Indian culture. So today we are going to see some places of knowledge. Vidya sthana. Sthana means place. Vidya means knowledge. So places of knowledge means what? You go to these places to gain knowledge. Now don't get confused. I am not talking about places means Kashi is one place and Veliyanad Shankaracharya's birthplace is. I am not talking about physical places. I am talking about texts, books, treatises, volumes, in which knowledge is there based on which this entire culture, Indian culture, has come about. So we are going to see the structure of Indian knowledge and how the tradition has taken this Indian knowledge forward with all these texts. That's what we are going to see in today's session. Up to this is clear? Now, before we enter into it, one more important thing we need to understand is, in Indian tradition, in Indian culture, we never distinguished between spiritual knowledge and material worldly knowledge. That's something that we must understand. In all other cultures, in all other religions, these two are clear bifurcation is there. That this is spiritual knowledge and this is worldly knowledge. You won't find such clear bifurcation in Indian tradition because we never considered knowledge to be worldly or spiritual. Every single thing for us was spiritual. It may be about the world, but finally it has to lead to spirituality only. To give you an idea, just as an example, grammar, Sanskrit language in which all these texts are written, the grammar of Sanskrit is written in such a way that it also becomes a yoga, a philosophy, a darshana for us to realize the Supreme. So it's not just grammar as a subject that you are understanding language. No, the purpose is through language you are reaching that Supreme. And that's why in Indian culture, spirituality, spiritual knowledge and materialistic worldly knowledge always went hand in hand. And we will see also as we proceed and as we see number of examples there, we will understand how both spiritual and material were described in the same text. Alright, so this is something that we must understand. Now let us get into it. So there are 14 places of knowledge. Chaturdasha Vidya Sthana. Sometimes they also call it as Ashtadasha, 18 places of knowledge. What are they? These two verses are from Vishnu Purana. One of the verses is also there in Manusmriti. The verse I will just chant and then we will see the meaning. It says, Angani Vedash Chatvaro Mimamsa Nyaya Vistaraha Puranam Dharma Shastram Cha Vidya Hyetash Chaturdasha. We'll understand the meaning. Angani Vedaha Chatva. Angani. First point is Angani. So there is something called as Anga. What Anga? That we will see. Vedaha Chatvaraha. Chatvaraha Vedas. Four Vedas. Mimamsa Nyaya Vistaraha. First, just understand the words. We will go into detail of each word. Don't worry. Puranam Dharma Shastram Cha Vidyahi Etash Chaturdasha. What are they talking about? The base of entire Indian culture, tradition, religion is the Vedas. So the first thing that we must understand in this Indian knowledge tradition is the first basic, or what we say as the foundation book, that is the Veda. Now, the word Veda itself means knowledge. See, today's session is going to be lot of information and lot of new things. So it is okay if you want to write down, etc. Please feel free, no problem. Okay. So Veda word itself means knowledge. Veda comes from root vid. Vid means to know. And therefore, Veda word itself means knowledge. Now, obviously, as knowledge, Veda is one. Careful. Veda as knowledge is one because it is one knowledge we are talking about. Right? And this knowledge, how did it come about? So, there is a very important thing about Veda that we must understand is that it is apaurusheya. See, we are going to see the entire thing from Vedantic perspective, okay. Veda is apaurusheya. Apaurusheya means what? That it is not authored, written by a person. Okay, if it is not written by a person, then how did it come about? These are revelations of different rishis. Pujya Gurudev, Swami Chinmayananda used to call rishis as subjective scientists. They were scientists only, but their field of investigation was not outside world, but their field of investigation was themselves. And therefore, these subjective scientists went into their laboratories called as Himalayas. See, for chemistry research, you need to go to chemistry lab, isn't it? Now, for spiritual research, for subjective research, you have to go to a place where all the objective distractions will be minimum. And therefore, they chose Himalaya as their laboratory, and in that laboratory, when they were doing research, certain ideas were revealed to them. These mantras that are revealed to them were taught to their students. So, whoever got that revelation, he taught or she taught to their students. Now, those students learnt from the master, from the teacher, also might have got some more revelations, and then that was transferred to their students. And in this way, in an oral tradition, the knowledge transfer happened. Because it was taught by master to students and it was heard by students and then it was taught further, another name for Veda is Shruti. Shruti means that which is heard. That which is heard means what? That which is learnt. So, Veda as knowledge is one, and this knowledge is revealed knowledge. Now, please don't think that this is something very new here. What is this talk? You are suddenly talking about revealed knowledge, etc. It is nothing new. When we say Newton's law or Archimedes' principle, can we say that he wrote the principle? No, it was revealed to him. And that's why revelation happened at a very, unnatural places. Archimedes got that revelation when he was taking bath in the bathtub. They tell story that Newton got that revelation when he saw apple falling. Because it was revelation. Gurudev used to always say, the idea struck him. For idea to strike, it has to come from somewhere else. It has all called revelation only. So, what is there in Vedas? Veda contains knowledge which was revelations of these different rishis who were investigating into the subjective world at different times at different places. Now, what happened? Over time, what happened was that the students that were coming, the next generations, next batches which were coming, they started to reduce their memory capacity. The memory capacity started to get reduced. Then Veda Vyasa came, and what did he do? He was Vishala Buddhi, we say. Huge intellect. So therefore, he went to all the rishis, learnt all the knowledge, and put the entire knowledge as textbooks into 4 volumes. Careful. Veda as knowledge is one. Then from that Veda, these 4 volumes are created. Why? Because the knowledge will be preserved. It should not happen that one student could not remember, therefore that knowledge is lost. And therefore, what he did, he learnt everything and then put that entire knowledge into 4 volumes, and that's what we call as 4 Vedas. What are they? Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda and Atharva Veda. How did he do this classification? So one basic, there were of course many ways why he put that particular mantra in that particular text, but one simple thing that can be seen is Rigveda contained all Padya. Padya means that which is in meter, poetry. Proper meter is there, no? Tune. You can put those mantras in tune. Those mantras, mostly Rigveda mantras are Padya. Yajurveda, most of the mantras are Gadya. Gadya means prose. Prose. Samaveda contains most of the mantras which are songs, which can be sung. Not just in meter, you see, but songs have got different kind of meter. No, it's not just by number of letters. The song goes forward in a very different way. So, Sama mantras are Gita. So, Padya, Gadya, Gita. And this 4th Atharva Veda, which people consider as, which came later, has got important mantras from these 3 Vedas. Sometimes, people also called first 3, Rik, Yaju and Sama, Rik, Yajus and Sama as Trayi. Trayi means 3. Trayi Vedaha. Of course, Atharva Veda also we consider as 4th Veda. Actually, in Atharva Veda, most of the section is from Rigveda only. But important mantras were taken, lot of what we say praise of the nature etc. is there in this Veda. So, this Veda is the first. Chatur Veda, 4 Chaturaha. 4 Vedas are there. Then what? Angani. Angani, the 6 Veda Angas. Anga means part, limb. Anga, no, we say Anga, part of. What do you mean by limbs of Veda? See, these were the 6 sciences, we can say, which I must study to understand Vedas correctly. So, whatever is given in the Veda, knowledge which is there, to understand that correctly, I must first study these 6 things. And therefore, they are called as Vedanga. Vedanga. 6 of them are there. So, 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas. What are these 6 Vedangas? Shiksha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Vyakarana, Chandas and Jyotisha. Don't worry, we will go one by one. First is what? Shiksha. Shiksha is what? Shiksha is science of phonetics. How each letter is pronounced. Why? Because that is the first thing that I must understand to understand anything, isn't it? First thing that we teach children is what? Alphabets and how to pronounce those alphabets. So, similarly in Sanskrit also all these Vedas are in Sanskrit. So, in Sanskrit when these letters are there, how are they to be pronounced? How is A, K, Kh, Ng, Y? How are they to be pronounced? So, the entire science of phonetics. See, when we are seeing this, please understand how methodical our ancestors were. That they didn't leave anything for imagination. Everything was documented and taught as a formal education. So, the science of phonetics was taught to them. We have granthas, Shiksha granthas are there, Naradiya Shiksha is there, Paniniya Shiksha is there, different granthas are there that they teach, and all the children, all the students who are going to learn Vedas will first learn this. So, they will be taught K is pronounced from where? Kantha. So different rules will be there. They will explain which is to be pronounced from where, e, u, how long should it be, everything related to phonetics, pronunciation, uchcharanam. So that text which explains this science of phonetics is called Shiksha. Shiksha. Second is Kalpa. Kalpa Granthas are operational manuals for any Vaidika karma. Vaidika karma means what? You see, Veda has got many things. We have Karma Kanda section, Upasana Kanda section, Jnana Kanda section. We have heard about this, isn't it? In Karma Kanda section, what is there? Lots of actions are prescribed. Lots of yajna, yaga, the karmas are explained. Now, when those karmas are explained, now I must know how to perform that karma. Operational manual should be there, no? Veda will directly say that, okay, 14 ishtika should be put like this. 100 ishtika. Ishtika means brick. Ishtika means brick. Now 100 bricks should be put in this fashion, in a mandala. Now what is this mandala? What is the size of a brick? Now all that I will get in this kalpa. Kalpa. Second Vedanga. Shiksha, science of phonetics. Kalpa, operational manual for Vaidika karma. Third is Nirukta. Nirukta means etymology. Etymology? The meaning of words. You see, I understood the science of phonetics. So, I know how to pronounce letters and how to pronounce words. Now, each of those words will have meaning. How do I find meaning from that word? What exactly is the meaning of the word? Sanskrit is such a language that the meaning of the word is hidden inside the word itself. That's the beauty of Sanskrit language, and that's why it is surviving for such a long time. Nothing is random. Nothing is random. Okay. So, when you say, I'll just give you an example for you to understand. Nayanam, when we say Nayanam, Nayanam means eyes, eye. Okay, eye. Why is eye called Nayanam? Because Nayanam word comes from root ni. Ni Naya means to lead. Now, because my eyes lead my way for me to walk, eyes are leading. Therefore, eyes are called as Nayanam. Now, the same root ni also creates another word called Neta, leader. Now, why that person is called as Neta? Because that person is going to lead the society. So, what I am trying to explain is, every single word in Sanskrit comes from some root and has got some etymology. Etymology means it explains how that word needs to be understood to get the meaning out of it. The formation of word. Now this Nirukta, there is a text called Nikhandu. Nikhandu is dictionary of important words of Veda. Why? Because see, Sanskrit language is such that each word can mean different things also. And therefore, all those meanings of that word should be collected so that it can be decided what meaning is to be taken in which mantra. So, in Vedic mantras, different words will be there. Okay. For just example, go. Go word is what? Go means cow. We all know cow. But go also has another meaning of earth. Now, very funny things come out when we don't understand whether cow is what is meant or earth is what is meant. In one place, it is very interestingly mentioned. 1,000 goes on top of each other when you keep, that is the distance. Now, can't imagine, no, 1,000 cows on top of each other. There it means earth. So, when in Vedas one word is used, what are all the possible meanings? So, Nikhandu is a kind of dictionary. And to that Nikhandu, there is a Nirukta, which is a commentary on that dictionary, which explains to us how that word comes to mean that. And also, what meaning should be taken in which context. Yaska has written that word, that Nirukta, which also becomes a Vedanga, third Vedanga. So, Shiksha, Kalpa, Nirukta. Fourth is Vyakarana, grammar. Why? Because now I am able to pronounce the alphabets. I am understanding the meaning of the words. But now what is the next step? How sentence meaning should be understood. How correct words are to be understood in the context of a sentence. Thus the grammar becomes next. Science of grammar and linguistic both. Again in Vyakarana we have number of texts. Okay, but that which is followed even very relevant now and mostly people use is Paniniya Ashtadhyayi. Panini, one of the grammarians, one of the great grammarians, has written a text of rules of grammar. It's a masterpiece. You will never see any rule book that exhaustive, in the sense that he has put rules for everything, and wherever there are exceptions for rules, he has put rules for those exceptions also. He is an unbelievable person and unbelievable text. Paniniya Ashtadhyayi. Ashtadhyayi means the text with 8 chapters. In 8 chapters he has divided 4000 sutras, 4000 formulae. Right? So that is Vyakarana. Next is Chandas. Next Vedanga is Chandas. Chandas means meters. So when I am supposed to chant the mantras and they are in a particular meter, the way they are chanted, I must understand the meters. So Anushtup meter, Trishtup, Jagati, Pankti, Gayatri, all these are meters. They have rules. How many letters should be there in 1/4 of the verse of the mantra, and then total how many letters should be there in the entire mantra. There are rules, and then that particular mantra or shloka should be chanted in that particular way. Example. We all know Bhagavad Gita, therefore I am giving simple example. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samavetayu yutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Now this is from first chapter, first verse. Then there is another verse, apuryamanam achala pratishtam samudramapah pravishanti yadvat. Now these two meters are different. I cannot say dharma kshetre kurukshetre apuryamanam achalam. It will all go. Either it will not fit. The tune will not fit here. Why? Because different meters. There 8 letters are there in 1/4. Here 11, 12 letters are there in 1/4. Right? So I must understand the meters also, in which the Vedic mantras are there. So I must understand how to chant Vedic mantras by understanding first the meters. And then the 6th Vedanga is Jyotisham. Jyotisha is what? Jyotisha is astronomy and astrology, both. Careful. Many people think Jyotisha means astrology. Hath dikhana. See, Jyotish Vidya. Jyotisha means astronomy and astrology, both. So space science also comes into it, and also effects of those celestial bodies on us, which is called as astrology. That is also part of this Jyotisha. Right? We have Vedanga Jyotisha text written by Lagadha, which is one of the Vidyasthana, one of the main texts for this Vedanga called Jyotisha. So now to study Vedas, I must have knowledge of these 6 also. So Shiksha, Kalpa, Nirukta, Vyakarana, Chandas, Jyotisha. So 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas. How many over? 10 over. 10 over, no? Now what are the remaining 4? Mimamsa, Nyaya, Purana and Dharma Shastra. But before we go there, in Ashtadasha Vidyasthana, some people say that there are 18 places. What are the another 4? They are called as Ayurvedo, Dhanurvedo, Gandharvascheti Tetrayah, Arthashastram Chaturthascha, Vidya Ashtadashaivatah. The 4 Upavedas. Upavedas means they are subsidiary to Vedas. They are connected to Vedas. Upa. Now, what are these 4 Upavedas? So, first is Ayurveda, very famous. Everybody knows now. They may not know Rigveda, but Ayurveda everybody will know. Why? Connected to me directly. This Ayurveda is Upaveda of Rigveda. So, each of the Upaveda is connected to the main Veda. Okay. Ayurveda is what? Science of medicine, we know. And we have so many texts on Ayurveda written, Charaka Samhita, Sushruta Samhita, and so many. So many texts are there. So Ayurveda is a science of medicine which is connected to Rigveda. Rigveda's Upaveda. Second Upaveda is Dhanurveda. Dhanurveda is Upaveda of Yajurveda. Dhanurveda. Now Dhanurveda is not just archery, okay? Dhanush means bow. So Dhanurveda is not just archery, but it is science referring to all kinds of warfares. Not just pertaining to one particular weapon. So Vasishta's Dhanurveda Samhita book is available, where he discusses everything. He discusses different kinds of weapons and how to make, and very elaborate. See, that's what I am trying to explain. That see, our ancestors were so evolved and they thought about everything. How many types of weapons are possible? A sword is one kind of weapon which you don't throw, isn't it? But spear or something is something that you throw. Then there is something which you tie to the long rope and you throw and you pull it back. There are certain weapons like bow and arrow where you keep bow in hand, arrow is shot. There are certain weapons where a kind of yantra is required, a machinery is required to throw it. All of these things they have thought about. Ayurveda also, okay, to cure diseases and how to live so that the diseases will not come. All that also taught. This is also Dhanurveda, is Upaveda of Yajurveda. Third is Gandharva Veda, is the Upaveda of Samaveda. Gandharva Veda is what? Gandharva Veda we know, related to art forms, music, dance, and all the arts. 64 kalas we say, no? 64 kalas are discussed. All that comes in Gandharva Veda. And very aptly, it is a Upaveda of Samaveda. Why? Because Samaveda has got, poetry, not poetry, songs to be sung. So Gandharva Veda is the Upaveda of Samaveda. And fourth is called as Arthashastra. Arthashastra is not just economics, okay? Arthashastra means politics and economics, because they both always go hand in hand. And this Arthashastra is Upaveda for Atharva Veda, the fourth Veda. We have famous Kautilya's Arthashastra, Chanakya, no? Sometimes people call Kautilya by the name Chanakya, well-known name is. So Kautilya's Arthashastra is very famous. Now some people, they also say that no, Arthashastra is not the Upaveda of Atharva Veda, but there is another Upaveda called Sthapatya Veda. Sthapatya Veda means what? Science of architecture, town planning, how you should have cities planned, and each house also how it should be, Vastu Shastra, etc. we have heard. All that comes in Sthapatya Veda. Not just Vastu Shastra. See, Vastu Shastra, many people think that it is only related to how to build a house. That was not the only thing. It was complete city planning, town planning, whatever the way we want to tell. Even how to build temples. Where should be the temple? Where should be the staff quarter? Where should be the king's palace? Every single thing was planned. And they had what we say, drawings for everything. different mandalas and different kinds of cities. And they never said that only one type of city. There are 7 types of city planning is possible, and all of that was explained. Where should be the drainage system? Where should be the recreational activities? Every single thing was taken into account. So 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas, 4 Upavedas, 14. Now 4 which are remaining are, first we will take Purana Dharma Shastra and then we will go to Mimamsa Nyaya. Purana. Next is Purana. Purana word itself means what? Pura api navam iti Puranam. Pura, that which happened, that which was navam, and it is even now it is like a new. Old yet new. So this is something that happened, but even today it is very, very, very relevant. That is called as Puranam. Puranam, we all have heard. Puranas are different Puranas are there. For famous Puranas, Bhagavat Puran, we have heard. Vishnu Puran, we have heard. Garud Puran, oh now the Garud Puran is very famous because of certain movies, etc. People very much fascinated by all the punishments which are given in Garud Puran, etc. Whatever, we have heard about this Puran concept. There are 18 Mukhya Puranas. 18 Ashtadasha Mukhya Puranas. Mahapurana they are called as. Ashtadasha Mahapurana. And you see how they used to do it. So what are these 18 Puranas? There is a verse which explains, a formula is created to remember names of 18 Puranas, 18 Mahapuranas. What is the formula? Madvayam Bhadvayam Chaiva Bratrayam Vachatushtayam Anapalinga Kuskani Puranani Vichakshate. Now when somebody hears, have you heard anything like this? Madvayam Bhadvayam Chaiva Bratrayam Vachatushtayam. It is actually a formula. What it says is Ma Dvayam. 2 Puranas are starting with word Ma. Matsya Purana and Markandeya Purana. 2 Puranas starting with Ma. Madvayam. Bhadvayam. Then there are 2 Puranas starting with Bha. Bhagavata Purana and Bhavishyat Purana. So Madvayam, Bhadvayam. Then Bratrayam. Starting with Bra, word Bra, no, not word, letter Bra, 3 Puranas are there. Brahma Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Brahma Purana, Brahmanda Purana, Brahma Vaivarta Purana. So Madvayam, Bhadvayam Chaiva, Bratrayam, Vachatushtayam. Now starting with Va, there are 4 Puranas. What are they? Varaha Purana, Vamana Purana, Vayu Purana and Vishnu Purana. Varaha Purana, Vamana Purana, Vayu Purana and Vishnu Purana. Okay, how many over? Madvayam, Bhadvayam 4, Bratrayam 7, Vachatushtayam 11. Now 7 are remaining. All the initial letters of those 7 are put in one word. Anapalinga Kuska. Anapalinga Kuska. So A is what? Agni Purana. Narada Purana. Anapa Padma Purana. Linga Purana. Anapalinga Kuska. Garuda Purana. Anapaling and Ga also was there, no? So Garuda Purana. Kurma Purana. Skanda Purana. Seven over. Count. Na, pa, ling, ga, ku, ska. 7. 11 plus 7, 18. Puranani Prachakshate. These are the 18 Mahapuranas. That's not all. There are 18 Upapuranas also. I am not going to tell, but I am just telling that there are 18 Upapuranas also. Shiva Purana, etc. we have not counted here. Those are also there. Now, what is this Purana? To understand Purana, first let us understand its cousin brother, Itihasa also. Then we will understand both together. What is Itihasa? Itihasa word comes from breaking that same word. Iti, ha, asa. Iti, thus. Ha, indeed. Asa, happened. Thus, indeed, it happened. This is called as Itihasa. So, all those people who say Itihasa is mythology, my dear, you are wrong, because the word itself means this happened. There is no mythology involved in this. It is history. It's not mythology. It's a recorded history. So, we have two main texts which come under Itihasa. One, of course, is Valmiki's Ramayana, and second is Vedavyasa's Mahabharata. Both these will come under Itihasa. Okay, Valmiki Ramayana, okay. There are so many other Ramayanas written after that. All that doesn't come under Itihasa. But Valmiki's Ramayana comes under Itihasa. Vedavyasa's original text called Jaya. Mahabharata's original name is Jaya. That comes under Itihasa. Then some more things are added into it, and then bigger text is formed. But the original Itihasa is Itihasa. Now, this Purana Itihasa, what is their role? There is a very famous line which says, Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupa Brahmayet. Whatever is said in the Vedas is explained through story in Purana and Itihasa. So, in Itihasa, it will be explained through real stories that actually happened. In Purana, most of the stories will be real, but some of the imaginary stories also will be there, called as Upakhyana. Now, that Upakhyana is told to explain one point of Veda. We used to hear stories in childhood, no? We have heard stories of sour grapes, fox and the sour grapes. Have you heard this story? Yeah, everybody has heard. Now, we don't go and finding out historical value of that story. What is the historicity? Who was that fox? Where was he born? Who saw that he was eating the grapes from the tree? We don't go and finding out. Why? Because the story is meant to communicate certain point. What is the point? That when you don't get something, you say they were bad. Why? Because I didn't get it. That's the point that is communicated through story. Now you get the point, leave the story. But why stories are required? Because everybody loves stories. And story becomes an easy medium to communicate points. So Veda speaks of philosophy, spirituality, etc. Those difficult points are explained easily through these stories. Therefore, Puranas and Itihasas are very famous. And that's what is the purpose of both of them. So, Purana Itihasa together comes in Purana. Here in Veda, Chaturdasha Vidyasthana, Puranam is mentioned, we have to understand Itihasa also. Then it comes Dharma Shastra. Dharma Shastra is a law book. It is like constitution. Means what? Again, remember, whatever we have seen so far, no? Purana, Itihasa, Dharma Shastra, all of them together also sometimes are called as Smriti. Sometimes Dharma Shastra itself are called as Smriti, Dharma Granthas. I mean, the Shastra Granthas for Dharma are also called as Smriti. Sometimes the entire thing is called as Smriti. Smriti, which was remembered, memory. Means what? All these texts are written by particular people. They are not like Vedas, which are revealed knowledge. Vedas are revealed. Puranas, Itihasas are written by individuals. Dharma Shastras are written by individuals. the important thing about that is the Smritis are in line with Shruti. Shruti is Veda. So what Veda has said, Dharma Shastras will expound on it or make it into rules. Simple example. Suppose I am starting a new school. I have a vision statement for that school. Some vision statement will be there. And then afterwards, I will create rules for the school. So there will be rules for the staff, there will be rules for the faculty, there will be rules for students. For everybody, there will be rules. Now remember, these rules are formed from that same vision statement. And they have to be in line with that vision. If they are not in line with the vision, we say, hey, this is not right. Your vision is something else, you are telling something else. So these Dharma Shastras are formulated rules on the same concepts that Veda is telling. Now, of course, there will be certain rules which are universal rules, which can be followed by anybody at any time, and there will be certain rules which are specific to that time, and therefore continuous updation of that Dharma Shastra is required. Just like our constitution. Our constitution of India was formed in 1950, but from 1950 to now, it has changed, isn't it? We have made so many amendments, we have deleted so much of portion, we have added so much of portion, we have changed, so much. Why? Because it has to change according to time. So in Dharma Shastras also, one section will be there which is universal, but there will be one section which needs to be corrected time and time again. Why I am telling all these things? Because generally Dharma Shastra, Smriti Granthas which are there, of course Sutra Granthas are there and then Nibandhas are there, but Smritis are very famous. Manusmriti, Yajnavalkya Smriti, these are very famous. And many times people criticize these texts by saying that they are wrong. You see, they are not wrong. Maybe there will be certain sections which are not relevant today. That doesn't make it wrong. You understand? See, there was a time in Indian constitution also, if we say that there were many people who were illiterate. So therefore, instead of signature, you can put your thumb mark. Isn't it? Then we slowly changed it into signatures. Now because of technology, we have changed it again into thumb mark. But this time it is not with what we say, that ink etc. We say thumb print. Scan. Now will you say that the person who wrote the law about putting it into ink and printing it wrong? No. It's not wrong. It is correct. It was correct at that time. Now it is not relevant. We need to change that portion. So there may be certain portion in certain Smriti Granthas which needs to be updated, but there is a larger portion which remains same. They are called as Dharma Shastra or Smriti. So 4 Vedas, 6 Vedangas, 4 Upavedas, Purana, which also includes Ityasa, Dharma Shastra, which includes Smritis, Smriti Granthas. There are 18 Smritis also. Yajnavalkya, Narada, Parashara, Brahaspati, so many Smritis are there. Manusmriti, of course. Now the last two are Mimamsa and Nyaya. So Mimamsa and Nyaya are basically coming into the category of Darshana, philosophy. Why I kept it at the end? Because I am not going to elaborate on it in this session. That will be taken in the next session, where we will understand the overview of Darshana only. Right? So Mimamsa and Nyaya are two darshanas taken here. We will understand the meaning of them etc. in the next. So when we say Chaturdasha Vidyasthana, 14 places of knowledge, what are we referring to? We are referring to 4 Vedas, we are referring to 6 Vedangas, and we are referring to Purana, Dharma Shastra, Mimamsa and Nyaya, 14. Then when we say Ashtadasha Vidyasthana, 18 places of knowledge, we add 4 Upavedas also into this 14, and thus it becomes 18. Now you imagine this much knowledge we had in writing. We are not talking about wisdom of people after studying the knowledge, okay? I am telling only about, and that also we have not completely understood the voluminous size of all of them. Vedas are huge. Okay, Vedangas are, because preparation for Vedas are not that big. But again you come to Puranas, etc., they are huge. Some Puranas are there with 1 lakh verses, 24,000 verses, 10,000, 18,000 verses. Mahabharata is 1 lakh verses. Ramayana is 24,000 verses. Bhagavad is 18,000 verses. Then on all of them, there are commentaries to explain. There are notes, Bhashya, Tika, Vartika, all of that is also there. And they say that Britishers came and taught us how to be civilized. You see the irony? All this was there before any other country knew how to live and eat. Be proud that we belong to this culture. The oldest living culture, the entire culture is based on knowledge. And this is the knowledge we are talking about. Okay, so Veda, Vedanga, Upaveda, Purana, Itihasa, Dharma Shastra and Darshana. Right? This is the entire, what we can say, gamut of Indian knowledge traditions. This is the knowledge that was passed on through traditions to continue this Indian culture. And whenever it was found that the culture is going through a difficult phase or the knowledge is becoming irrelevant or going down, some great master came and revived this entire thing. Just as Vedavyasa we saw, when the knowledge was slowly going away, Vedavyasa came and put everything together into volumes. When again, after many eons, people were not understanding what is this Veda for, why are they giving Purana and Bhagavad Gita is coming where, in what is the connection? Then suddenly we saw Shankaracharya rising and giving the entire connection. This is the Veda, this is Upanishad, this is what is important. Upanishad is the Shruti Prasthana, then there is a Smriti Prasthana called Bhagavad Gita, there is a Brahma Sutra, and how to find connection and how to find relevance even now. Not just at that time, even later on, now in 18th century, 19th century, we have so many masters. Swami Vivekananda, so many people. What did they do? They revived the culture. How did they revive the culture? By re-establishing them into knowledge. That's how they revived the culture. Be proud that we belong to this culture. Now, in the next session, we will see this concept of Darshana, philosophy. It's going to get little technical, okay? Today's session was just an introduction session, so no technicality much, a lot of information, but next session is going to be more technical. Third session, of course, will become more technical. 2 questions are there, I will answer that and then I will open to other people for questions. Number 1, I thought Vastu Shastra is part of Medini Jyotisha. So, is it not part of Jyotisha rather than Upaveda? No, Vastu Shastra, that's why I said no. Some people consider Sthapatya Veda as a separate Upaveda of Atharva Veda, then it becomes a separate. Otherwise, it comes part of Jyotisha. Right. Second, what is the broad content of Manusmriti, which is good commentary to understand it? Broad, see, there are 3 chapters in Manusmriti and then there are subsections, etc. It's a broad topic, and of course Sanskrit commentaries are available in Manusmriti and English translations are also available. We will answer it in a different way whenever you want to study. See, my always suggestion is you understand Sanskrit, you learn Sanskrit and then open Manusmriti. It will give its meaning itself. Don't depend on any of the translations, because the translator always has got something in the mind which comes out through the translation, right? So it's always good to, and see, that's the beauty of Sanskrit language. The language has not changed. Language has accepted so many new things but has not changed. Valmiki Ramayana, which is considered to be the first poetry written, because Vedas are not written, first poetry written many thousands years before. Today also I learn Sanskrit, I can easily understand Valmiki Ramayana. I don't have to study Valmiki's Sanskrit. Just as there is English and Shakespearean English is different. Shakespeare was just few hundred years back, okay? But you can't understand that, thou arst. You can't understand that. It does not happen like that with Sanskrit. So you learn the language, Manusmriti you open, directly it will give meaning. Right? Next question. Nikhandu is a part of Nirukta? No. Nikhandu is a dictionary of Vedic words in the Vedas. Nirukta is commentary on these words. So Nirukta is actually commentary on Nikhandu. Etymologically, it explains meaning of each word. Tulsidas Ji's Ramayana falls under which category? None of these categories. See, we are talking right now about the base of Indian knowledge traditions. There are so many other texts which don't come under all this. Tulsidas Ji's Ramayana is one example. There is Kamba Ramayana, there is Bhavartha Ramayana, there is so many other Ramayanas are there. Adhyatma Ramayana is there. Adhyatma Ramayana in Sanskrit, Adhyatma Ramayana in Malayalam. All of them are bhakti literatures. Many of the other granthas are there which are in what we call as bhakti traditions. Different traditions are there. No, Shaiva, Vaishnava tradition, Shakta tradition, etc. Agama tradition they call it. So there are many such texts. Tulsidas' Ramayana comes under bhakti grantha. It is not considered as Itihasa. Why? Because Itihasa is only Valmiki ji wrote, because he was there at that time and therefore he wrote whatever he wrote is considered to be Itihasa. So there are many such texts, okay, that we have not yet touched also. In the mantra Smriti, Smriti Purana, Smriti and Purana are mentioned separately. In the mantra Shruti Smriti Purana, Smriti and Purana are mentioned separately. No, I told now Dharma Shastra is generally considered as Smriti, but when you only classify as Shruti and Smriti, then Smriti takes into itself Dharma Shastra, Purana, Itihasa, everything. In the verse that is chanted, Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam. So there that Smriti means Dharma Shastra. But in a general sense, when they just classify it as Shruti Grantha and Smriti, then in that Smriti we take everything, Itihasa also, Purana also. Okay, yes. Any other question anybody has got, please raise your hand and then I will unmute you and then you can ask. Are Darshanas interpretation or perception of Vedas? I will tell you in the next class. Darshanas, that's what I am going to explain in the next class. Any other question, anybody? Oh, one more. So there is a difference of opinion. Some say Arthashastra, some say Sthapatya Veda. Any one of that can be considered. See, Indian culture is so vast and it is there for so many years that such difference of opinion is always going to be there. Some say this, some say that, and we accept, see, we are Advaita Vedantis. We always accept everything. You say Arthashastra, oh okay, yes. Then you will put that Sthapatya Veda into Jyotisha. You say no, Arthashastra was not there, Sthapatya Veda was there. Okay, no problem. Then Arthashastra will put under Dharma Shastra. No problem. For us, no problem. Okay. But there are 4 Vedas and there are 4 Upavedas. One more question. Rasayan Shastra and Bhautika Shastra, like these subjects were exact. That's what I am telling. So that worldly knowledge and that kind of difference was not there. So Rasayan Shastra is chemistry and Bhautika Shastra is physics. They were in and out, part and parcel of these all texts. They were not categorized as physics and chemistry. That's the difference. But otherwise, you see, Rasayan Shastra was already involved. Metallurgy, etc. was involved. How to create machines, machinery, mechanical engineering, etc. was involved. In Mahabharata, there are portions and portions talking about all these topics. Now, you don't take it out as a separate. That's how Indian tradition goes. We don't say that, okay, I am going to study Mahabharata, but I am not going to study physics. When you study Mahabharata, everything will be taught. The physics part of it, chemistry part of it, metallurgy, biology, medicine. No, I'm not just talking about medicines as a science, but the procedures, etc. are discussed. Test tube babies, etc. All this is discussed. Operations, Sushruta Samhita, Charak Samhita, if you see, operations are explained. Eye surgery, transplants, all this is explained. Okay. Glorious culture, glorious people. Okay. I think that's sufficient for today. In the next session, next Sunday, same time, 6:30 to 7:30, we will have an overview of Darshana, philosophy. Nastik Darshana, Astika Darshana, what are different, where Vedanta comes in, and how many types of philosophies, all that we will discuss in the next session. Right. We'll conclude. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om.